most common reason is that entrepreneurs fail or just simply give up?
Well, funny you ask, because I speak about this because I've been faced with this. I've a couple of years ago, I mean, and you kind of know my story, not to share it all the way here, but I'm in real estate. I got partnered up with a bad dude, and long story short, we had a bunch of deals, and he was stealing money, and I got put through the ringer hard. And this is when I was in building up phase, so I had access to some credit, but I mean it made me every ounce of my body not want to quit. And what I realized was most entrepreneurs quit not because of hardships, it's because they have hardships and they still have to produce at the same time. Mm-hmm. You have some entrepreneurs who I call them, they kind of cheat, and there's nothing, I'm not talking, this isn't good or bad, but they go through a tough time, but their spouse makes, $150,000 and they can kind of float, and that's awesome. I didn't have that situation. So when you're all in, and maybe it's a spouse, husband, wife team, or whatever the case is, in my case, it was my business and my wife was super supportive, but she wasn't getting an income anywhere else. And when I got hit so hard over a prolonged period of time, over a year and a half total-ish, I wanted to quit, but I had nothing to retreat to because I burned my boats. So I had to fight, and I had to establish, I had to really wrestle with stuff. This was real deal to me. So things that happened to me, I changed my whole business model because of what happened to me, because, anyone that has any ounce of wisdom would say, okay, this happened. How do I not let that happen before? Because that really hurt. So I changed my whole business model to adjust. But it all goes back to that. I'm a huge mindset guy. I think entrepreneurs that start equipped with what they already know, but they don't realize what they're about to face in the land of entrepreneurship, in the wasteland. You're going to go through this wasteland. And if you think that when you had your corporate job, if you can just take that what you had and bring it over to entrepreneurship, and now you go from the cubicle with parameters. Yeah, you hated your boss and all this stuff. I get it. But at least you had parameters. You had your check every 2 weeks. You had some goals. You had your title. You had your position. You knew it was expected of you. Now you jump into entrepreneurship. You don't have any of that. There's no one telling you you must do this. There's no one telling you these are your parameters. You have to set it for yourself. You got the economic conditions. You can lose money. You can make money. You create your own income. And that messes with a lot of people's heads. So I think a lot of people are ill-equipped with mindset, and then you will get punched in the face. And I think when you get punched in the face, you have to retreat to that mindset to know what's going on and to be able to still produce and be able to get through those valleys that we all hit.
Yeah, you're totally right there. Now, what would you say specific roadblocks would be that you would advise a new entrepreneur to watch out for then?
I would say one roadblock is thinking that we know everything. Mm-hmm. And I guess a close cousin could be not being coachable. Because here's the deal. When you jump into entrepreneurship, I don't care how much of a stud you are in the corporate world or whatever world you lived in, there is so much to learn. Yeah. And there's something to say for being around people that are wise, that are older, especially people that have had some level of success over a sustained period of time. That's the other thing. Just because someone jumps into some entrepreneurship, it's like these guys, they jumped into Bitcoin and they were making a ton of money in Bitcoin, but anyone was making a ton of money in Bitcoin at first because that's all it was doing. But there was no strategy to that. And just because someone was making a bunch of money doesn't mean they should be coaching you of how to do it. And it's the same true with business. You might get a guy that jumps in and they do some hot deal. They made a bunch of money. Next thing you know, they're trying to teach everybody from a place of wisdom. That's just coming from a place of they did a couple things right. They got a little lucky. And that's vastly different.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I've seen many people that it's sort of that one-hit wonder sort of success. They had a good deal, made a lot of money, but then they try to tell everybody else how to do it again, and it's just not not teachable, or
Mm-hmm.
or you hear a lot of people, doing what I call the water cooler advice, where you have a bunch of unsuccessful people telling other people how to become successful.
Oh
And,
yeah.
sorry,
Everywhere.
how does that work?
That is everywhere. And I think people have a general, people have a general need to be wanted, and they want to have approval, and they want everyone to know what they do, and they want everyone to accept them and think, you're so awesome and all this stuff. And so people have this natural tendency to turn into gurus and coaches just because they did one or two things right. And it's a trap, I think, because it's like real estate, right? I mean, real estate goes up and down and changes markets and cycles and all this stuff. Well, just because, and talk to the guys in 2008 that got destroyed. I mean, when literally over a day period, the banks pretty much shut down all the funding, all the credit lines. Yeah. The day before that, they were raking in the dough. They were on top of the world. They were making all this money for a couple years, and it got shut down overnight. And a lot of these guys got destroyed because they got too cocky. They started buying bad stuff, and they were banking on appreciation, and all that snowballed. And then the hammer came down, bam, done for a lot of people.
Yeah, that was scary times. It's pretty scary times there. So since we're both veterans, we'll kind of lean towards that direction. What kind of support resources would you say that a budding veteran entrepreneur should look for?
Well, one is there's a lot of good veteran groups. There's a lot of good veteran entrepreneur groups. There's a lot of veterans who, veterans are unique in that we've been through a lot of stuff, some people more than other people. And there's that other dynamic. Especially getting out, and I struggled a lot with this, but you just kind of don't fit in anywhere, especially if you go out from your unit, you get out of the military and you just jump in and you're in some corporate job with a bunch of civilians. You just don't fit in, and it eventually starts wearing with you. So I definitely think linking up with other veterans, and especially if you're going to be a veteran entrepreneur, link up with other veteran entrepreneurs. I mean, link up with the type of people that you want to be, and try to link up with people that are a little bit more successful so they can just guide you. I'm big on wisdom and learning from mentors, learning from coaches. And, there's arguments for and against it. I get it. I mean, some stuff's expensive, some stuff's free. I mean, all those things. But at the end of the day, there's always people that will give you advice. There's people that care. There's people, I mean, don't expect some super successful guy to, be at your beck and call and give you 50 hours a week of their time. I mean, respect their time, bring value to them. Sure. But a lot of people can easily, within a 5-minute conversation, say, hey, do this, do that. And that alone could save you 2 years of turmoil.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like the saying goes, you're the sum of the 5 or 6 people that you spend the most time around. So, sure. I find that's one of the strongest resources is your time, and who are you spending it with? Mm-hmm. Are you spending it with people that are going to help you grow, or are you spending it with people that are basically, burying you in the process?
Absolutely. And especially from an entrepreneurial level, if you're trying to jump out, it's hard enough by itself. Mm-hmm. You're going to really have to evaluate who your friends are, who your confidants are, who everyone is. And sometimes you got to make some drastic changes to take a stand for what your goals are and what you want to accomplish in life.
Mm-hmm. So what, Derek, is something that you wish you had done earlier in life that now is vitally important?
Well, earlier in life in general, I would say I lacked a lot of direction. So even when I got out of the military, I've been out of the military for a while. I got out in the early 2000s. And I did what I thought everyone wanted me to do. I was an approval seeker through and through. I did the school thing. I went to undergrad, then I even got my master's. I have an MBA. And I checked all those boxes, and I floundered, and I got into some law enforcement and stuff. And I would say I didn't really have a ton of direction. I didn't have a lot of mentorship in my life, and that's no one's fault. Mm-hmm. I wish, I had someone that was successful entrepreneur or something, and got me in my mid 20s and, took me under the wing, but, it didn't happen. So thinking back, if I was to talk to a young guy, if I was to talk to a young Derek, a young me, it would be all about learning how to change your mindset, tweaking stuff, maybe certain books, and figuring out what it is you want to do with your life, and stop feeding into this approval mindset that you have to seek approval from everybody. Because I floundered for probably a good, 12, 15 years.
Wow. Sounds kind of like me, actually. Yeah, wow. For probably the first 10 years, I know, because, when I went to a corporate job, it was the same thing. Doing that, doing what I thought everybody else wanted me to do. And at the end of it, you get laid off, and it's like, okay, what do I do now?
Right. Yeah.
So let's kind of focus on some questions about Derek Murrell for a few minutes, if that's all right.
Sure.
A little less about business, but a little bit more about you. So when you were transitioning out of the military, all of us have our transition stories, but what hurdles did you encounter when transitioning? And then especially when you finally decided to go into entrepreneurship, what those hurdles were and how'd you overcome those?
Well, when I first got out of the military, it was back in 2001, and I thought I was the baddest dude ever. Mm-hmm. Got out of the military and I went right to college, and I didn't know what I wanted. I just wanted to do something and express myself, whatever. So I walked on the football team at UMass, University of Massachusetts, and I just walked into the coach's area, and I talked to the head coach. I said, I want to play. And he kind of looked at me like, okay. They just started their I guess, two-a-days and stuff. And I walked onto the football team, and he gave me a chance. And so I think I was looking for that camaraderie at college. And I guess if you're in college, the closest thing you'll get to like a cohesive unit, I guess, would be sports teams. And I figured football. I never played football. I mean, I never played growing up. So I figured I just wanted to hit people with the ball. That was I told the coach that. And that's all I wanted to do. And, but again, you just flounder. And then, you're going to the different, oddball jobs and just, so I didn't have any veterans groups I was a part of. There was very little of any hand-holding or any, I think and it could be totally different today, and I'm sure it's a little bit better, but it seems to me there would be a vast need if there were veteran groups that you're able to tap into when you did to get out. And they might have that now. Maybe they had it then. I just never knew. I don't know. But those were the hurdles, was just the floundering. Mm-hmm. And I don't care who you are. You could think you're the top of the world, but eventually time is the great equalizer. You can't live a fake life for so long. It might get a few years out of you, but eventually the floundering starts, that approval, it starts messing with you. And then you start questioning yourself, and slowly you get into some bad places. And I mean, I suffered with years and years of depression and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of it was linked back to some military stuff, but just that whole cycle of time. I mean, I call it like a dark decade or whatever. And I didn't become an entrepreneur until 2014. So you're talking 13 years after I got out of the military. I floundered for that 13 years. And I could tell you what I'm doing now is exactly what I was created to do. That 13 years, I was doing everything else for other people. Mm-hmm. And that's I could look back at that and be like, man, 13 years, that's a long, I mean, gosh, what I could do with 13 years now. But, you live your life, and the best thing I can do, part of my thing now is my three pillars are time, freedom, and impact. And that impact piece is I actually try to share with people. I try to give them some wisdom. I try to shoot them straight and say, hey, I mean, this is stuff that I've learned. This is what I see, and I might try to help them. And not everyone takes advice, but I do try to impact people. But I mean, the hurdles with entrepreneurship was not anywhere close to the hurdles of that 13 years of floundering, because once I figured out what I wanted to do,
Mhm.